You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffauf.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Bulldog Hour. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays. Alongside of me, co-host Justin Raffauf.
Yeah, we have a few games to kind of recap and plenty to discuss, and we'll be able to kind of do that over the next part of the show, and hopefully, that you find it interesting, and can hopefully come back when we have more to talk about in a few weeks with some more games under our belt.
Yeah, and we have the non-league schedule to recap now. As we did our preview show a few weeks back, just kind of looking ahead to the entire season. Now we're back here with episode 2, and we're going to talk about the first 3 games that the Wilson Bulldogs 2015 team has played already. We had 2 away games and a home game this past Friday night, and we're going to break down all 3 before looking ahead to the next few weeks leading up to what will be the 3rd episode of the show. Sometime in mid-October, we'll kind of get you caught up to speed of the first few league games that have been played, starting with this coming Friday, where the Bulldogs will travel to play Lancaster-McCaskey. Okay, but tonight, again, we're going to be talking about the non-league schedule. We have highlights to show you. We have players of the game to talk about. There's some great plays and just a lot of good stuff to talk about this evening from the games at Mifflin, at CD East, and then home versus Central Dauphin. And I think we're going to start right away with, well, probably the best place to start is against Mifflin with the hyped up match at the beginning of the year, the first game of the season. And it was definitely an interesting game to begin with, because there was a lot of hype surrounding the Wilson team, a little bit of a rebuilding atmosphere in terms of the Mustangs. They lost a lot from their team in 2014, which was a very strong squad from last season. And a lot of people, I think, were expecting this to be a big Wilson victory. I don't think they expected Mifflin to hang around, but hang around they did, and they made it quite a game for a long time. Wilson was able to come out on top. The Bulldogs came away with the victory 14-3, but I think it was anything but what was anticipated when we were doing this show about a month ago.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it while it may not be what was anticipated by many, I in no way would consider it a surprise, just because it sounds cliche, but anytime you have those 2 big rivals going up against each other, you really don't know what you're going to get. And we've seen that in this series over and over and over again. They've played a lot of times, and sometimes you think you know what the outcome is going to be, and it just doesn't turn out that way. Fortunately for the Bulldogs, while it may not have turned out exactly how everyone kind of was anticipating, they were still on the positive end, and were able to kind of battle through. And the defense gave up more yards than they would have typically liked to have given up, especially on the ground. However, again, against Mifflin, that's going to be a challenge. They're going to push you there, and but the Bulldogs did hang on to win 14-3. They were able to get some things going on offense at times, but then some key mistakes and just kind of a play here and there can kind of put you behind your marks, and then next thing you know, you're in 3rd and long, and something like that, and it's just not a tough situation to keep drives going.
Yeah, we should have maybe been, not us in particular, but maybe the atmosphere surrounding it from the community and the media, maybe they should have been up on the expectations of the game a little bit better. It's easy in hindsight to say that, to expect a team bringing back a lot of players to just run over a team that maybe isn't as experienced as expected. But we heard Coach Walber mention on the show when we did the interview with him in the preseason about there wasn't a lot of depth and experience or they weren't playing very cohesive as a unit along the defensive line. It takes some time to get those players, playing together as a unit. We saw that team last year do that very well. This year they were trying to find their identity, and Coach Waldmore mentioned in that interview that it was going to be tough at the beginning of the year because of the teams they were facing in weeks 1 and 3, being Mifflin and Central Dauphin. They were going to test how good the defensive line was. And you mentioned it wasn't a spectacular defensive effort against Mifflin, and it's kind of laughable to say that they gave up 3 points,
right?
But in terms of Wilson defense, they were able to do the cliche stereotype bend but don't break. They didn't give up the real big play. They didn't give up any touchdowns. Sure, they gave up 213 net rushing yards and 244 total offensive yards, but no touchdowns. I mean, if you're only giving up 3 points on a single field goal right before halftime, you should win that game, and obviously the Bulldogs did do that.
Right, exactly. So like you said, it's kind of tough to sit here and say, the defense was okay when we want to look at it, and then essentially, basically, what it comes down to was, it was okay. They gave up 3 points. Like 3 points, you have to win that game. Like I don't really care who you're playing or what the situation. You only give up 3 points. You need to win that game, and the Bulldogs were able to get enough going on offense and finish enough, of the time to be able to kind of get those 14 points.
Right, and one of the things that the defense also was able to do, they were very fortunate. They were able to create turnovers, getting the ball back in their offense's hands. You had 2 interceptions, one each by senior leaders Ike Schonauer and John Fox, and then also a fumble recovery by outside linebacker Jake Klein. So they were able to make a play when it mattered. When they were giving up time of possession and driving yards to the Mifflin offense, but they ended 3 drives with turnovers, and that was huge to keep them off the scoreboard and give the ball back to your offense, and hopefully that they could get things clicking and advance down the field. Now at halftime it was 7-3, so I think probably sweating it in the stands, the visiting stands for sure, because like I said, the expectations coming to the game was going to be that this should be Wilson's game to lose.
Right, and it's kind of one of those things. Like we said, it's tough to gauge, and we talked about this in the preview show. It's tough to gauge kind of where teams are at. You have the scrimmages, you have all those things, but until you line up against the team on that first week, it can be difficult to kind of really anticipate where teams are going to be.
All right, I think.
That being said, I think Mifflin went on in week 2 to
they beat up on Lancaster Catholic, yeah,
and then I think they lost this past week to Manheim Township. I'm not 100% sure.
They did. No, you are correct. Mifflin went on to beat up on Lancaster Catholic pretty good.
I think like 42-14 or something.
Yeah, and then Manheim Township came back and did a similar thing to them in week 3. So Mifflin is sitting there at 1-2, but no pushovers. They're not playing anyone that their 2 losses to Wilson and Township, who are expected to be 2 of the best, if not the best teams in Lancaster Lebanon League Section 1, and 2 very strong teams in District 3 Quad A. So, 1 and 2, okay, yeah, you'd like to be a little bit better, but they're certainly going to be prepared for their Berks League, League Part 1
and they have some interesting
schedule.
Games against, they'll play Reading and Exeter.
They play Reading this week, actually.
They could be some interesting games for them, but.
All right, so enough of us talking about it. Why don't we move on and show you some of the highlights and go over some of the events that happened in that first Mifflin game. And we have some offensive and defensive highlights here to show you, so let's get right to that. All right, first up here is at the beginning of the game to end their first drive, which would take almost 8 minutes of play, was an Ike Schonauer interception. Now, he did actually fumble the return, but it was recovered by Jake Gaiman. And so the first big play we have to talk about was that interception. It was huge. Mifflin was driving down the field, and Ike Schonauer was able to step in front of the pass and pick it off and gave the ball back to the Bulldogs. Unfortunately, the offense wasn't able to do anything with it, but it just showed you what we talked about, that Wilson was giving up the yardage, but when it counted, they stepped up and made a big play.
Yeah, because you had mentioned just there that Mifflin had moved the ball, and then but the defense was able to come up with the big play to kind of limit any damage that could have happened on that drive.
Next up is actually another turnover forced by the Wilson defense. This is going to be a fumble recovered here by number 2, senior outside linebacker Jake Klein is the one that's going to come up with it. And the Wilson offense will take over. Now we're going to get some Shane Dantzler highlights. He's going to take the ball here and nice open field run, getting the first down, and just one of the few bigger plays that Wilson had on the night. There wasn't any, that went for 50 or so yards, but there are a couple nice ones, breaking 10, 20 here and there. And you see him, one more guy, if he didn't get caught there, he was gone. And we saw that plenty during the game against Mifflin. Shane Dantzler was also involved in the passing game. We see him there taking the swing pass. And he had a really productive time on the ground and through the air against the Mustangs. Unfortunately, Wilson would lose him in the second half to a lower body injury, a leg injury, one that is still hampering him now. He missed the next 2 games against CD East and Central Dauphin, and from what we've heard, it doesn't look like he's expected to be back anytime soon. Whether or not that's due to the severity of the injury or just a precaution to keep him ready to go as some of the big games on the schedule come up in 3 weeks against Hempfield and a couple weeks after that at Manheim Township, and obviously to look towards the District 3 playoffs come November. But Shane Dantzler went down against Mifflin with a knee injury and has not played since.
Yeah, so no real timetable there for his return yet. Seems like it's kind of a week-by-week thing, but he wasn't dressed this past week yet. He was kind of on the sideline with crutches, so it's definitely not a reach to know that he's probably at least a little bit from his return yet.
Luckily for Wilson, senior running back Bailey McElroy stepped in and took over right where Shane left off against Governor Mifflin, finding a couple big holes, making some big plays. And as Coach Dom said after the Mifflin game, that for a lot of the teams in the area, Bailey would probably be the starter on many other teams. And here's one more Shane highlight for you before he left the game with an injury. Now we get a little jet sweep to Jake Gaiman, who gets the ball inside the 5. This is leading up to Wilson's first touchdown of the game, which comes right here via Shane Dantzler, who is untouched going into the end zone. But a few more offensive highlights here for you. A nice pass from Colin Powers to Jake Gaiman for a big gain here. And now we flip to the defensive side, and we see our second interception of the game. This one by John Fox, the safety, 3-year starter, and he's been quite the leader for the Wilson defense over the last 3 years, and continues to play at a high level, both on offense and defense, lining up at receiver on offense. But that play, a nice highlight of his defensive prowess from the safety position, picking off the Mifflin pass and giving the ball back to the Bulldogs. Now, a couple more offensive highlights here. Again, back to Bailey McElroy, filling very admirably for Shane after he went out with an injury against Mifflin. He gets a couple of carries, and he also contributed in the passing game as well. That was really the story of the Wilson offense against Mifflin. They get bottled up, and then they finally have someone break through and would get a nice 10, 12-yard gain. Like I said, there weren't any big hitters, any huge, highlight reel plays, but it was methodical, and they got the job done when they needed to, scoring those 2 touchdowns. Here, another jet sweep to Jake Gaiman, a really big play for the Bulldogs that evening. And we're about to see here, we should get set for our second touchdown of the night by way of Bailey McElroy coming up here in a few plays. But again, what was your take of the Wilson offense against Mifflin?
I think when you look at things like Shane going out hurt, and you have a first-time starter at quarterback, regardless of who it was going to be, it ended up being Colin Powers. I think there were plenty of good signs, being able to see the team move the ball, but there was definitely some signs that there was work to do. Like you said, seeing not that you love to be able to get the big plays, but I think at times being able to see some of that steady, consistent moving the ball was good. They needed to learn to finish in that game. They needed to be able to finish those drives with points because, against some of the teams they're going to continue to play throughout the schedule, you can't necessarily leave those points on the board. They were fortunate that the defense was up to the task of holding Mifflin to less than 14 points. Holding a team to less than 2 touchdowns is no easy task. And Mifflin moved the ball, but the defense was able to hold them to 3, which was huge because the offense only put up 14 points. Now, again, I thought there was plenty of positives to take away in that they were able to move the ball. They just lots of mistakes that, or misses, I should say, that led to not being able to finish off those drives.
Yeah, overall, I think the Wilson offense got it done. It's their first, actual real game experience. I'm sure there were jitters. You're playing a rival. You got a new quarterback. You got a couple new linemen. On defense, you're missing, like we said, some defensive linemen, getting some adjustments there. You have a lot of experience in the secondary, but it's just time to gel, and that's what the non-league schedule is for. Figure out who your team are before you face off against those 7 league teams and try to win another league title. Offensively, the teams, Mifflin and Wilson, were pretty evenly matched. They both ended up, Wilson had 14 first downs, Mifflin had 15. Wilson rushed for 184 yards, Governor Mifflin had 213. Where it stands out is Wilson only had 113 passing yards. A nice debut for Colin Powers, big one, no interceptions. Governor Mifflin only threw for 31. That's their issue. They were very, very one-dimensional. We saw when they tried to pass, right. Wilson picked off 2 of them.
Right, they were 6 of 14 with 2 interceptions. So, a quarter, or actually, they had 33% as many interceptions as they did completions, and that's not going to get the job done unless you are able to finish off some of those drives. Like you said, they racked up yards on the ground, but they couldn't get in the end zone.
Looking at everything that happened against Mifflin, we're going to hand out our first player of the game honors here. And Justin and I talked about it, and we think with what had happened and the way the game was going, I think the best person to go to is someone who wasn't even a starter entering the game, and that is to reserve running back and now starting running back Bailey McElroy, who filled in so well once Shane left in the second half. He ended up having 13 rushing attempts and gaining 81 yards, getting the pretty much the decisive touchdown to put the game out of the reach there in the fourth quarter, putting Wilson up 14-3. He also added 2 receptions for 20 yards, getting a nice clip there. A little over 6 yards per carry, 10 yards per reception. We got to give credit to the offensive play calling. They knew what he could do, and he showed what he was able to do, and turned in a nice game after only really playing one half of football.
Right. So, you put up those stats in essentially one half of touches, and that was a big need for the team for somebody to step in because, like we said, Wilson being able to move the ball was possibly what helped the defense out a lot. If they had been going 3 and out all the time and giving the ball right back to Mifflin a lot, not being able to kind of gain those yards, then who knows what's going to happen. It's 7-3 at halftime, and Shane gets hurt early in the second half, and who knows what happens in that second half if Mifflin is only down 4 and doesn't have to worry, or if Wilson can't move the ball anymore. So Bailey really stepped up, and he gets our Player of the Game award for that Week 1 win.
Yeah, so congratulations to Bailey. You're Player of the Game for the Week 1 victory over Mifflin. Before moving on to talk about the CD East game, the one thing I want to talk about just quickly is how, and you weren't there to see it, but how ludicrous it was at the amount of cramping that the Mifflin players were going through. It was comical. Like, people had just started laughing. And, you don't want to say, well, they're faking it, because I don't think that they were doing that. But it's just, wow. I mean, the conditioning wasn't there. They didn't take proper, they didn't hydrate properly. But in the second half, it got to be nearly every other play. A player was down on the field. And it was always cramping. It was never anything more significant with a knee or an ankle or something that they're always laying on the field, pulling back on their toes, trying to stretch out a cramp. But it was commented on by a lot of people, and it was just interesting that happened during the game in the second half. over and over and over again. People were saying it added a good 15, 20, even maybe a half an hour to the length of the game just because it kept happening. Like I said, after you get to like 8, 9, 10 times, you just start laughing about it because you're like, this is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, low-scoring game like this, it did go really long. I think wasn't over till like 9:40 or so.
Yeah, 2 hours, 40 minutes.
For a 3-score game, you know, 2 touchdowns.
Not a lot of clock
goal.
Stoppages except because of the cramps. So just an observation, not really a takeaway from it, just something that, people are going to remember from that game. All right, in week 2, Wilson went on the road again, this time to CD East, the Panthers. You'll remember them from 2014. Wilson played them in their Week 2 non-league schedule, winning that one 31-14. They also then played them in the District 3 Quad A semifinals, which was a nail-biter, a tight one, 9-6. I know there were a lot of Panthers back on this team that they felt last year in the playoffs that they should have beaten Wilson for whatever reason we're not going to get into there. It didn't happen. They felt disrespected. They felt that they were the better team. So they were really looking forward to this Week 2 matchup, and they got to host Wilson now. So it was on their turf, and they were out for blood. They wanted revenge. They wanted to get back at Wilson for what happened last season, primarily in the playoffs. So Wilson entered the game as somewhat of an underdog. The Penn Live reporters, all 3 of them picked CD East. Now, one of them tried to qualify it after the game, saying they were picking against the spread, which I think Wilson was favored by 6. So he was trying to say, well, I would have picked Wilson to win straight up, but the spread, I took CD East. Whatever, semantics. High school kids aren't going to care about that, and I make sure that they know when they get picked against. So going into this game, a lot of people thought CD East Panthers were going to get the better of the Bulldogs. Wilson, a lot of people say, didn't look good against Mifflin. CD East had a nice victory against one of the Hershey schools in Week 1. They were hosting Wilson, but I don't know. Do you remember what happened?
Yeah, and like you said, the team, there were a lot of questions, and Wilson really didn't do anything to calm down those questions with the Week 1 outcome. Unless you were there and you kind of saw the game or things like that. A lot of people left Week 1 with more questions for Wilson than they did before Week 1. So usually you hope to kind of shore up some of those things, but there was uncertainty about the running back position. There's uncertainty about the defense giving up lots of rushing yards. There was all kinds of questions after Week 1. Going into Central Dauphin, I understand why some people were a little unsure. Like you said, outside of Wilson, though, it seemed like a lot of people were on CD East. And you know what? I think they had a lot going for them, but it didn't turn out too well for them.
No, the final of that game was 38-0 in favor of the Bulldogs, and Wilson just came out. They were a little slow at first. I think after the first quarter, it was only 3-0 Wilson. So, the first 5 quarters of the season, not exactly what was expected. A lot of, I think in most of the statewide football polls, Wilson was a top 10 team. People probably expect a little bit more of offensive, fireworks of output from a team expected to challenge for a state title. Things started rolling in the second quarter. And just continued throughout the game, and it was an incredible defensive performance throughout. The offense did their part, got a few scores, but there was also a score on special teams and 2 scores on defense. So offense 17, special teams 7, defense 14. So it was an all-around great game for the Bulldogs in an absolute blowout and demolishment of the Panthers, who were supposed to be incredibly hyped and ready to go for this game. Now, is this the Wilson team we expected? Is CD not as good as we thought? Is the answer somewhere in between? It's still way too early to tell, but usually it's like, there were a couple bad luck things, but I mean, the Panthers didn't get their first down until like 22 seconds left in the first half. They had 1 first down and 7 total offensive yards at halftime.
At one point, I think it was 24-0 at this point, but the Panthers did stop Wilson on a 4th and 1 at the goal line, and then drove it 98 yards basically to the Wilson 1-yard line, and then there was a mix-up with a snap, and next thing you know, Wilson is returning it all the way for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I don't know. I assume
We have it
it'll
on
be
here,
on
yeah.
here, and you'll see it.
So I started the highlights for those of you just listening. We started the highlights here against CD East. The first one was a run by Bailey McElroy, our player of the game from Mifflin. He's filling in again for the injured Shane Dancer. The second one was a nice play-action pass to Alex Twyford, and then we were opened the scoring with the Nick Hart field goal to give Wilson a 3-0 lead. Here's a couple of defensive highlights. There was an incredibly great swarming mentality by the Bulldogs defense all night long. And we got to see Colin Powers open it up a little bit more. After a solid debut, he looked to take a step even farther, looked even better against CD East. We saw him throw a nice 35-yard touchdown pass to John Fox. But again, swarming defense, Ben Harris, Nick Klein, Torrey Coates, Alex Twyford, those guys all along the line had an incredible game against the Panthers, and they really did quite well. Seeing some of these highlights again, we got to see Jake Klein make an appearance at quarterback, running some keeper and option stuff, scoring the game's second touchdown after the John Fox reception. John Fox absolutely lit up that kid on that toss right there, throwing him for a 2-yard loss. It was a great moment from the game. And here, if you're watching, this is the special teams touchdown. Absolutely incredible. Let me see if I can run that back here quickly. It's a fake punt, snap to the up back, who gives it to Brian Wright coming around the corner, and there was some great downfield blocking on this. No penalties, an absolutely stellar special teams touchdown, and what a moment to call it, too. Now, Wilson's up 17-0, but CD East hasn't threatened at all. The defense has completely shut them down. At this point, no first downs. They hadn't moved. They've all been 3-and-outs or some penalties thrown in. So you're at, I think they were at the 40-something, 42-yard line. Where's the harm in faking it? Your defense has shut them down. And a perfectly drawn up and perfectly executed play by the special teams coaches and unit to spring Brian Wright to get him his first varsity touchdown. And like I said, downfield blocking was excellent, and Brian just took it down the sideline. It just what a play! It was great. Here, let's watch it one more time.
Actually, I talked to Brian about it, and he was telling me he was a little when they called it, he was like, okay, and then he's a little worried just from the way they're lined up, because CD East had one of their big guys lined up essentially on him. And then he said he had the ball, and he scanned real quick, and the player he was concerned about was still running the other way. And he's like, okay.
I guess
I'm
good.
And then he realized, and he's starting to close, but then he got the blocks he needed, and he just was able to turn on up the sideline and finish that off.
Back to the highlights now. We're going to see another stellar play from the defensive line. I believe this is senior defensive lineman Torrey Coates here is going to spring through and just absolutely take care of the lineman and take down Jihad Nybarra, their quarterback. Just another great play by the defense. And here, again, Ben Harris, one of the guys just reading the play, and then look at the people just swarming to the ball. It was like that all night. Wilson was all over the Panthers.
Yeah, and that's kind of the mentality you need, because the Panthers definitely have some of the players who can break it and have make a big play out of nothing. So it's important to finish those plays when you get the chance. And in this game, Wilson was able to do that.
All right, so I took it back here to make sure that we talked about this next play on the highlights here. This is what I thought at the time was 99 yards. It was actually an odd snap or something happened. It ended up being, I think, 86 yards.
Right, because that's where he picks up the ball. But from the original line of scrimmage.
And from my vantage point, because I didn't see that the ball flew back like it did here. But this is Wilson's first defensive touchdown of the game, and it's going to go to Jake Gaiman, who's going to pick up the fumbled ball. Now, the East had finally gotten some offense going. They had a huge 50-yard passing play. They got another big play, another 20-yard play, and they're down to the 1-yard line. And Wilson was stopping them inside the 5, and they got to this second or third down play, and something screwy happens here with the ball. Well, Jake Gaiman picks it up, and if you know how fast he is, you knew that it was game over once he got his hands on it.
I bounced right to him, too. He hardly had to bend over to pick it up. he caught it in stride and was able to race everyone and beat everyone down the field for the touchdown. And like you said, who knows what happens if Central or CD East gets in the end zone there. Hopefully, I'd like to think Wilson would still be able to be okay at that point in the game. However, that's just kind of, swung momentum back into Wilson to kind of finish out.
Now you're
game.
up a minimum of 3 scores, being 24-0. But to add insult to injury, the next highlight here is the next big play of the game. And just watch what happens when defensive end Alex Twyford gets a hold of the running back.
And thank you very much. I'll take that.
I'll take that ball, and I'm going to go to the house with it. So I was so confused at being on the sideline.
I believe the tweet was, I have no idea what happened.
It was.
But Wilson just scored a defensive touchdown.
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea what had happened because I thought I had heard whistles. I thought the play was dead. It was not.
Right.
But
thankfully.
The Panthers were just kind of standing around. Like you saw that one guy that kind of had Twyford wrapped up. Now he was trying to get away from him, but it almost looks like he kind of stopped because I don't know that he knew what was going on.
Right.
There were no whistles.
Right.
And he took it to the house and 38-0. I don't have too much else to say about that one. What a great, I don't want to say rebound because they won against Mifflin.
But we had said earlier in the show that there were a lot of questions going into week 1, even for a team with lots of expectations, lots of questions, just unknowns. And week 1 really didn't answer any of those. And if anything, the results of week 1, either the score, giving up some rushing yards, injuries, or whatever, kind of led to more questions going into week 2. And then, week 2 happens, and you're like, okay, well, I think we have some answers now, at least to some of the things. So kind of as that played out, I think, we kind of started to see that the offense was capable of moving the ball against another high-quality team. The defense played it's crazy. They gave up 3 points in week 1, and they gave up less in the next week. So that was kind of crazy. Give up 3 points through
more electric. Wilson can Mifflin ground and pounds, but we've seen that offense, so we knew what to expect. CD East is a relatively new, we only played them once last year, and we knew the type of athletes that they've had there, what they're able to do, and to hold them to no points. Now they ended up getting 8 first downs, but I said they got their first right before half. They only had 20 total net rushing yards.
Yeah, that's insane.
117 passing, so they didn't even get the 150 total offensive yards.
Right, and their average per rush was 0.6 yards,
and their average per play was 2.5.
Basically a foot and a half.
They forced Wilson
defense like 20 inches every time they ran the ball.
They forced 8 punts.
Yeah,
so it was just a all around solid game. Every phase scored, every phase looked good. Started a little slow, picked it up, and it was nice to get that victory in that decisive fashion. And for his efforts, it was tough to pick out a guy in this game because,
like you said, all three phases of the game played really well.
And there were great plays. Alex Twyford was a maniac. He was catching passes. He was blocking. He was tackling. He was ripping balls out of people's hands and scoring. What a great game from him. We had the huge highlight play from Jake Gaiman picking up that fumble and returning it to the house. But we thought, looking back on it, we just ended up going a different direction here. And I think I look back at the point of the game when I mentioned it in the highlights, when John Fox lit up the CD East running back or quarterback, whoever had the ball, the enthusiasm and excitement that he just kind of got the team going. He added a big 30-yard touchdown reception,
Absolutely.
And he flying all over the field. He had another great, solid game for the Bulldogs. And like I said, no one really stood out in terms of one player going above and beyond and just manhandling.
It was an
incredible team effort. So it was really, really difficult to single out a person for this game. But Fox had 4.5 total tackles, one of them that we highlighted for the 2-yard loss. And again, he had that pass reception for the touchdown. He ended up having 3 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. But John Fox is the player of the game for CD East. All right, now we're coming down to the third and final non-league game, and this one happened just on Friday night, and it was the most anticipated early season game in recent memory. You know, it's hard to say that with Mifflin because Mifflin's always anticipated.
Right. You almost don't count that one because there's so much
stands
other
alone.
stuff. Right, yeah.
Because, I mean, and everyone will think back to the game from last year. Everyone will think about the lead up to that game. So that was a huge game. But Central Dauphin and Wilson, right there with Cumberland Valley, are the three big teams in District 3 Quad A. So when Wilson signed a contract with them last year to play a 2-year series, which has been extended for the next 2 years, it kind of was a huge deal. And we mentioned this when we talked to Eric Thomas from Central Dauphin. He does the radio for WMSS. You didn't used to see this because when District 3 only took 4 teams to the playoffs, you couldn't afford to lose a non-league game.
Right. No, you had to schedule a game basically that you thought it was a sure win if you were one of those top teams. That was a Quad A school. Quad A school, that's a top-level team that we can beat because if we play a small school and win or we lose to even a good team, we could be on the outside looking in with 1 loss.
And there are teams that went 9-1 and didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, they only changed this to 8 and then 16 teams in the mid-2000s.
Right. There were undefeated teams that weren't like the top seed, one of the top 2. They were the 3 or 4 seed, just based off schedule. It was a very different system than the system that's in place now.
But that all changed when they moved to the 16 teams. Teams could open up their non-league schedule. We started seeing some interesting schedules happen. Central Dauphin and Wilson meeting is huge. Like I said, the history there between those two teams in Cumberland Valley, that's most of the success that District 3 Quad A has ever had resides in those 3 areas. So last year, Wilson went to Central Dauphin, beat them 14-12. They then met again in the District 3 Quad A Championship, and Wilson won that one 21-10. So the Rams were, just like their brethren, the CD East Panthers, the Rams were thinking revenge, and they wanted this one bad. They got to come to Gursky. It was Wilson's home opener. It was also the Gold Out for Childhood Cancer Awareness. And we got the game, at least the final score, that a lot of people expected, that it was a very close, tough, hard-fought battle.
Absolutely.
People flying around, big hits, big plays, maybe a little bit more interference from the refs than you would like to see. Right. And I'm not saying this from a Wilson point of view. I'm just saying this. There was a lot more flags than you would hope to see.
And a lot of that was self-inflicted.
Oh, right,
like
I'm not
mistakes.
putting it on them. I'm just saying you saw more yellow stuff on the turf than you had hoped to see.
So you and I had the discussion during the game. It wasn't necessarily a great game. It was an exciting game.
Right.
And I think that goes for both teams.
It wasn't clean.
Both teams, I think, feel like they left stuff.
They left plays
like
and made mistakes.
They played hard, but they made some mistakes. I
don't think there's any critique of the effort from either squad whatsoever.
Absolutely. And from a high school football game, especially again week 3, you talk about early in the season, still trying to kind of figure things out. Some carryover from last year in terms of just motivation, if you want to add that in. Not that the guys need to be more motivated, but when you look at it, it's just there was a lot of hype around the game, and the game in terms of excitement lived up to it. I think in terms of execution, I think both teams could have been better. Who knows what the outcome is if that's the case? If both teams play closer to their peak, who knows what the outcome is? Unfortunately, Wilson was on the short end this time. They lost by 1 to Central Dauphin, and like we said, this isn't to say Central Dauphin didn't leave stuff out there, because I think they certainly could make a strong argument that they had some near misses on some long plays. They had some things come back on flags.
Touchdown called back.
Both teams, self-inflicted some of those mistakes, and that catches up with you. And you could argue, and I think it would make sense, that it caught up with Wilson a little bit more by about 1 point.
Well, I mean, literally, you could see it because Wilson had a botched snap and a missed extra point.
Right.
As a result of it, they had a missed field goal, 2 touchdowns called back because of penalties. I
think both were like formation penalties.
Most of them ended up being illegal formation, illegal shift type things. I had no clips blocking the back or anything. Central Dauphin was called back on a chop block. Very few holding
penalties, which was interesting because in this game, Central Dauphin definitely has some guys that can get after the quarterback.
Right, and Wilson started slow, as they have the past couple of weeks. They didn't do anything on offense the first possession, going 3 and out. Central Dauphin drove right down the field and scored. Wilson offense again couldn't muster anything. But the defense started to wake up a little bit, get things together, figure out the Central Dauphin game plan, get to where they needed to be. But yeah, the mistakes are killer.
Especially when it ends up being a close game.
Yeah,
there are games this year. Well, I'm saying this off past experiences. There are games where some of these mistakes wouldn't affect the outcome, and I don't know if they would have affected the outcome. But when you play a good team, you can't make that.
When you play a great team, again, both these teams in most places they're both easily in the top 10. A lot of times, both in the top 5. So this was a very hyped up and anticipated matchup this early in the season, with a lot of people thinking before the game was played, and now I think after the game was played, that these two teams seem destined to meet again in the playoffs. While they both hope it's the championship game, there's a couple other teams in District 3 that would like to say something about that, but definitely two evenly matched teams. We heard that narrative
last year as well, and it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Wilson Mifflin last year, but these CD Rams had something to say about that, upsetting Mifflin in Shillington.
So there's a lot of football to be played before we would get to that point. I know Wilson would probably, like to make it that far and just have the opportunity to try and correct some of those mistakes.
Yeah, let's get to the highlights and see some of what was happening during the game. We start out here with an offensive. I think Wilson was already down this game, but a nice pass from Colin Powers to senior tight end Brett Kaufman. You're going to find a theme tonight, and that is the Colin Powers. How he got
that throw
off to Bailey McElroy, who again was filling in for the injured Shane Dantzler. Bailey went down, 50, 60 some yards.
Yeah.
What a huge play that was from Powers to avoid the rush like that. Then a little bit of a trick play here, as that one went from Powers to John Fox, the receiver, who then tossed it to Alex Twyford to get Wilson inside the 5 to set up their first touchdown upcoming here. What's interesting is John Fox, 3-year starter at safety, 2-year starter receiver. He played quarterback for us at Wilson West, so he's no familiar. He's not unfamiliar with the ball in his hands like that. And we saw him flip the pass to Twyford to set up this first touchdown. And it's going to be Twyford who takes the direct snap and gets in from a couple of yards out to tie the game 7-7 early on against Central Dauphin. Another offensive play here and another great one from Colin Powers, finding Jake Gaiman over the middle. And he can use his speed to make something happen as he gets into Central Dauphin territory. And the play of Colin Powers in such a huge game was very, very impressive. Here he finds a wheel route. John Fox.
It was a nice throw.
It was a great throw. I do want to mention that the offense started slow at the beginning, and they did end up giving up 5 sacks. But the offensive line, I thought, with the hype that the Central Dauphin defense and especially the Central Dauphin front 7 gets.
Right.
I'm going to pause that there to talk about it. I thought the offensive line played pretty well. They really got their pass protection better after that first quarter. Michael Parsons is, this hyped up, incredibly talented player, only a sophomore asterisk, that had a great first series, but after that, they kind of shut him down. Now, they couldn't shut everyone down. It's just an incredibly talented roster that Central Dauphin has. But Michael Parsons didn't make a ton of noise after the first series or first quarter or so, and they actually flipped him around on an early downs. Instead of rushing against the Wilson left side, they rushed against the Wilson right side because senior offensive tackle Nick Klein really started to get the better of him.
Right, yeah.
And it was one of the reasons that Wilson was able to figure out what to do against the Central Dauphin defense.
Right, and, they moved him around, and, Wilson is definitely paying attention to where Parsons was because he can be a force. You can just look at his numbers and production there, and that's absolutely going to be the case. However, again, like you said, giving up 5 sacks, but that is a super talented defense up front for Central Dauphin. So, some of those things were in a situation where you wish you could have gotten maybe just a few less. But again, that kind of goes to the talk of, the effort was there. They fought really well against those big and talented guys up front for Central Dauphin. Yet, some of the execution just wasn't quite there. You give up 5 sacks, it's going to be against a great team. That's 5 downs where you've lost yards, and a lot of times you're putting yourself way back there. I know a couple of the sacks were for 11 yards. Well, if that's on first down, now you have second and 21.
Yeah, it's tough to overcome.
That's really tough. If it's on third or if it's on second down, now you only have 1 down. That makes it really tough. So, it's one of those things that, again, I don't know when or if they'll see a talented front line like that again this year. And unless they were to get a chance to play Central Dauphin again. But you can definitely see how Central Dauphin causes problems for a lot of teams, because I think Wilson up front has gotten better, and is going to be up there with a lot of the other teams that would have some of the better offensive lines, and Central Dauphin was still able to create problems.
Yeah. Now, if you were watching the highlights here, I stopped it. The play before you saw Wilson score a touchdown, that one was actually one of the touchdowns wiped off due to an illegal formation or illegal shift penalty. Then here, Wilson went to attempt a field goal, which I think initially was about a 27-yarder or something like that. But you'll see highlighted there is the referee, and as soon as they snap the ball, he tosses the penalty flag, and the backup holder actually didn't have proper equipment, and without warning, they got a 5-yard penalty for that. Right. Now, Jake Gaiman is normally the holder. He went out with an injury. He did return later, but would get injured again a tad later. So Wilson was forced to go back another few yards, and then unfortunately the field goal was then wide left, as you'll see here on the highlights. And in a 1-point game, that's a huge thing. But a couple of the actual good plays to see from Wilson here was a diving catch from Adam Close, and another superb play by Colin Powers moving around in the pocket to find Jake Gaiman, who just makes plays in open field. You got to get him in space, and they were able to do that there. And here on defense, we have a tip ball by Alex Twyford, and Wilson gets the interception, and a huge play here to attempt to try to get some points, which Wilson is able to do with a backup receiver, Nick Zappone, I think making his first ever varsity reception for a touchdown. Wilson had suffered injuries to John Fox and Jake Gaiman. They were in and out throughout the second half. A junior wide receiver comes in and scores a touchdown.
Again, a nice throw.
It was a very, very nice throw.
Where his receiver could get it.
But then, unfortunately, what should have been the extra point to tie the game, a low botch snap bounced to Jake Gaiman, who returned to be the holder here. And he rolls out, and I don't know if you'll be able to tell in the video, but he got face masked. You kind of see it when he was, when the camera was panning, unfortunately. But his entire helmet got pulled down. The pass is intercepted, but in high school you can't do anything with it. But there was no flag on that face mask, which is huge. Right. Obviously Wilson shouldn't have botched the snap, but right there, Wilson should have had the opportunity to try again.
Right.
And was not afforded that opportunity. All right, here's another defensive play and a sack by Ike Schauner. I looked through the video and was trying to find one play where he absolutely lit up the running back, and Wayne Sierra announced that Ike Schauner introduced him. I don't remember if it was Serb or not, but it was a huge hit, very loud, and for the stadium that was buzzing with the amount of people that were there, at least from the Wilson side, you could hear that throughout the stadium. Right. But there he was, Ike Schauner making a great stop on that play. Here's another Central Dauphin turnover, this one on a muffed punt. If you're watching the video, you'll see it here. It's a bouncing ball that it just kind of gets away from him, and Wilson ends up recovering.
You could see the Central Dauphin punt returner. It bounced, and he probably should have just let it go, but in an effort to maybe make a play, his head turned away before the ball was in his hands, and it went right off his fingertips, and Wilson was able to get the turnaround there.
So at this point, Wilson's still down by 14-13, but they're going to try to make some noise here, and a shovel pass to Bailey McElroy, picks up some yardage before Colin Powers is able to find tight end Alex Twyford, who is wide open, just absolutely wide open. But he makes a huge play. He got hit basically right when he caught the ball, but he held on.
And that was one of the things that I noticed, and we mentioned it all game. In the secondary, there were a lot of times that our receivers were able to get open, but either the linebackers dropping back in coverage or the safeties were able to kind of get right there and be at our guy and meet them with the ball really, really well. I was actually really impressed with Central Dauphin in that phase of the secondary. It seemed like they always had a guy there to hit the receiver as the ball's coming. So, or I didn't mean it, like as the ball gets there. So that's a great timing, and for our guys to be able to get open was great. But then they were getting hit when the ball gets there.
All right, just a few more plays here. A nice toss to John Fox, who makes a few people miss, and he gets the touchdown. Unfortunately, Wilson did not convert the 2-point conversion, and then Central Dauphin took the ensuing drive down the field, aided by, on second down, a huge pass to their tight end, which set him up right around the 5, and they punched in a few plays later. Their 2-point conversion failed. Wilson got the ball back with about 2.5 minutes to go. Couldn't muster anything, failed to convert on 4th down, and Central Dauphin ran out the clock. So the game finished 20-19, as you see on the screen right there. But, we mentioned it kind of at the start of this conversation about this game. You can't make those type of mistakes against an incredible team that is Central Dauphin. You hurt yourself, but you got to think we made a ton of mistakes. We were facing some injuries, and we still only lost by 1.
Right.
So you got to take the good with the bad, and this game doesn't really hurt you that much in the long run if you take care of business in the league.
Right, and just some of the post game talk was about just that. The things we mentioned here, that no one will fault the effort. The effort was there. They played hard. They were banged up because Central Dauphin is a big, physical, strong team. About probably as big and physical and strong as they're going to see this year. Not saying they'll face some other good teams, but Central Dauphin is the cream of the crop there. So that's nothing to hang your head about in terms of effort at all. So they're very proud of that. But when you're playing a great team like Central Dauphin, you can't have that many mistakes and expect to have the positive outcomes. We talked about those misses or and mistakes that happened in week 1 that kind of would shut things down on a drive. They were able to overcome that. Central Dauphin, a little bit of a step up there in terms of their product this year on the field, and it's just you make those kinds of mistakes again here, and you can't. It's tough to overcome that.
Wilson was only able to rush for 34 yards, and when you account for the sacks, they actually rushed for -16. It's tough to win a game like that when you don't have the running game going, but they had the passing game going, and that is displayed by our player of the game. Colin Powers was absolutely electric Friday night for the Dolphins. Senior, first-year starter, great story, fighting his way through to get to take over the reins. Everyone thought it might be Jake Klein. Powers had an incredible summer, and his first 3 games, the first 2, I don't think people are going to say stand out, but what's the big thing that didn't happen? He didn't turn the ball over, which is huge. And again, against Central Dauphin, no turnovers. He didn't throw any interceptions, and all he did was go 25 of 38 for 339 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's really kind of incredible.
What a great game from Colin Powers, and hopefully this just shows the maturity and experience that comes with being the starting quarterback. And if he continues to get better, that's obviously it goes without saying, but that's just a great thing for the Wilson team going forward.
Absolutely. So again, there are some positives to take out of the game, but there are plenty of things to learn from, and hopefully get better as the season goes on.
All right, before we wrap up the show here, we just want to mention some upcoming games. I said at the beginning of the show, next week, Friday, September 25th, Wilson travels to Lancaster to take on J.P. McCaskey. Wilson hasn't had difficulties with them the last few years, but the biggest thing, besides being on the road, is that Wilson is expected to be down close to a handful of players, quite possibly. I believe Shane Dancer likely out. Defensive tackle Max Saloka, likely out. Wide receiver, defensive back Jake Gaiman, likely out. I don't know the status of John Fox, who also had some injuries during Central Dauphin game. Could be with or without him as well. So some big name key players for the Bulldogs likely to miss the game on Friday against McCaskey. The Bulldogs will then return home on October 2nd for homecoming against Cedar Crest before a big showdown at Hempfield on October 9th. And that should be the first big Lancaster-Lebanon League Section 1 test for Wilson, as Hempfield has started the season 3-0 and looks to be very, very competitive this season in Quad A.
Yeah, they've looked very good in their first 3 games. And like you said, they're 3-0, so they're sitting there without that loss. So I think they're going to be ready for that game. Got to handle the business before then.
Don't want to look past McCaskey and Cedar Crest,
right? Because you don't want to get tripped up there. But some games, and definitely some big games coming up in the next few weeks. So again, like we said, when we look at the first 3 games, they were definitely able to kind of start to figure some things out. Still a lot of mistakes and things that they need to clean up, but I'm confident that they'll get that stuff right as they move forward and continue to get better. And then who knows where we'll end up at the end.
Yeah, and we'll be back in a few weeks to discuss the middle part of the league schedule. It might actually be after that Hempfield game. We'll have to see how the schedule falls. We'll make sure everyone's aware of when episode 3 will air. But yeah, Wilson sits at 2-1. The loss to Central Dauphin Friday night was Wilson's first regular season loss since September 7th, 2012. They had gone just 40-3 since then. No big deal or anything like that. 43 games, winning 40 of them. That's pretty good. That obviously includes the district and state playoffs. But, the 2012 team was hyped up and expected to do a lot, and they lost in week 2 to Harrisburg, and all they did was run the table through that district championship game, demolishing Harrisburg in a rematch before running into the buzzsaw that was North Allegheny.
Yeah, that just buzzed through everyone.
But, I would love to see the same thing this year with, the guys rallying, coming together, running through the LL League for, an 8th straight year undefeated, an 8th straight championship, and then, having their way in the district playoffs with a couple key matchups, and if luck would have it, meeting Central Dauphin again. That's a rematch I definitely want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, a lot to take care of before then, and we'll keep you updated best we can. But hopefully we're along for a good ride here over the next few weeks.
All right, so don't forget, the next Wilson game is this coming Friday against Lancaster McCaskey in Lancaster before returning home the first Friday in October to play Cedar Crest on homecoming. Anything else to add, Mr. Raffauf?
No, just keep getting better, and it's been fun so far. So hopefully we can keep this going.
Yeah, and I do want to thank our first sponsor. Actually, comes by way of my father. May Sandwich Shop has chipped in a little bit to help take over some of the financial strain of setting up another show in terms of equipment and web facilities needed. And again, there's multiple ways you can help out the show. Including just direct donations, but we also have kind of a rewards program. It's called Patreon. You can find the link on the website, bulldoghour.com. You can chip in a little bit of money per video and get a couple prizes, merchandise, some digital rewards for helping us out and get the show going. We'd love to be able to do this every week, but without the funds and the backing of the school, it's tough to do so on our own. So if anyone would like to contribute, please visit bulldoghour.com and check the how to support the show. And we appreciate any and all offerings that you have, because we want to keep doing this. We'd love to be able to do it every week. We have a lot of fun doing it. And we hope you've all enjoyed the first 2 shows, and we're looking forward to the next 3 for the 2015 season. But I think that's everything, and wrapping up here on the second episode of the Bulldog Hour. I'm Joe Mays. This was Justin Raffauf, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for the 3rd episode of the show.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.